Hey guys, this is Alpha. Today we'll be taking a look at the Raiden national team. This team is one of the strongest teams currently in the game, and is one of the most popular teams to be played in the Spiral Abyss, just because of its sheer power from Xingqiu and Xiangling, and exceptional support from Raiden and Bennett. So we'll be taking a look at how much ER you need for each member, how can you build them optimally, and whether it's worth or not to get 5-star weapons over 4-star. Let's start with Raiden. She is the core support for this team. A common misconception is that she's the main DPS, but that's actually not true. Most of your damage is actually coming from Xiangling and Xingqiu Vaporize, but you can still build her with a lot of damage if you want to. For stats, it's very important that you get at least 200% energy recharge so that you have a smooth rotation. With the maximum amount of ER you should be building is 300. If not, it's not worth it. Anything above 300 is really not worth it. You still need a lot of ER because what we're trying to capitalize on is the artifact set, the 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. It's a must, by the way, and the talent, which is her burst, the Muso Shinsetsu. This damage here is pretty insane if you have a lot of ER, but try not to stack too much because you still need attack. So the reason why you don't want too much ER is because ER only affects this part right here, the resolve bonus and the resolve stacks and the base damage, but it does not affect the hits right here. So if you use the ER burst, if you have a lot of ER, you probably won't have too much attack, and you hitting them with your normal attacks won't do that much damage. For weapons, her best in slot is definitely the Engulfing Lightning. It's literally made for her. But if you don't have it, any other 5-star is pretty good. Staff of Homa is decent if you can utilize his passive being under 50%, which is pretty difficult, especially in this team with Bennett. When you're standing in his bursts, it's very hard to go below 50% unless you're getting hit so many times. So if that's the case, if you can't use Homa that well, you can also go for Primordial Wing Spear. He has really good crit rate, although your rotation is going to be a little bit different because you want to auto attack a little bit so that you can use the stack. It's still fine because the crit rate is really good and it gives a lot of base attack. If you don't have the Primordial Jade Wing Spear, you can go any other 5-star like the Vortex Vanquisher. It's fine. Skyward Spine is fine. If you don't have any 5-stars, the free-to-play 4-star option is definitely the Catch. It's a weapon made for her. It's really good. It gives ER, which is very important for her. If you don't have the Catch, Star Glitter works. Favonius Lance work, but you need to make sure that you try to find something which gives you ER as a stat, or you can go attack, but I don't really have an attack spear at the moment. For artifacts, the definite option is 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. This artifact set was literally made for her. If you don't have this, try your best to farm it. A substitute option will be the 4-piece Tenacity of Milaf, but just remember, you're going to be losing your own damage if you do this. While you do buff your team's damage, I'd rather you just farm for Emblem of Severed Fate because its stats, 4-piece stat, is so much better than the 4-piece Tenacity of Milaf. So the two pieces I want to talk about is the Sands and the Goblet. Let's start with the Sands. Basically, if you're not running an ER weapon, try to go for ER Sands because you'll need a lot of ER to utilize the 4-piece bonus right here. If you're going an ER weapon, however, you can go for an attack percent Sands. It's much better. You don't have too much ER like I said at the start, so having attack is better. However, if you have better substats on the ER, then you can go for it as well. For the Goblet, there's two options you have. You have attack percent and you have electro percent Goblet. So which one do you go? The math is very close, even with a lot of scenarios, but attack and electro almost have no difference. So essentially, you just want to go whichever you have better substats and whichever you need for your set. So if you can use this to complete the 4-piece, it's good. And you can use an off piece for Sands or your Circlet. So once again, substats are more important and what's on top. There are some calculations out there that might say electro is better, some that might say attack is better, but once again, all that matters is whether your substats are good so that your stats overall will be very good. Next on the list we have Xiangling. She's a little bit tricky. She's the one with the most energy cost in this team for her burst. Her burst currently is at 80% energy, 80 energy cost. So it's very important that you have ample ER for her. So the amount of required ER for a Xiangling is 180, at least 180 in this team, because if you don't have 180, sometimes you might not be able to get it if you kill your opponents too fast. So try to get at least 180, 170 minimally if you really can't hit 180. For her best in slot is definitely the Engulfing Lightning, similar to Raiden, but her second best weapon is actually the Catch, based on math speaking, because you have increased elemental burst damage by 32%. This is insane, and the crit rate is increased, so you're just basically critting almost every time if you have very high crit rate. And if you invest in crit damage, this will definitely do a lot of damage with the ER substat. If you don't have the Catch or you don't have a 5-star spear like Staff of Homa or Primordial Jade Wing Spear or any other 5-star, her other weapon I recommend is the Dragon's Bane because it affects damage against opponents affected by Hydro and Pyro, which is definitely really good in this team because you have Xingqiu, Bennett, and Xiangling herself, so this weapon is actually pretty good. If you don't have Dragon's Bane or the Catch, you can go for an ER, like I said, similar to Raiden Shogun because ER is really good, and if you can invest invest in an ER weapon, you don't have to use ER for Sands later on in the artifact section. Now for artifacts, similar to Raiden Shogun, try your best to get 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. This set is so good in Xiangling. If you don't have 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate, you can go mix and match with 2-piece Shimenawa with the attack percent, 2-piece Glad which also gives attack percent, 2-piece Noblesse for elemental burst damage. So there's a lot of options you can go. Another underrated one is while you're farming Emblem of Severed Fate, you can go 2-piece Emblem as well for the energy recharge. If you really need ER, this is the best way you can get it as well. So once again, go and mix and match. You can also go 2-piece Crimson, Witch of Flames. Just remember your end goal is 4-piece of Emblem of Severed Fate. If you didn't notice, I didn't recommend the 4-piece Noblige because it's just not worth it. Later on, you'll be putting this on your Bennett anyway, and the effect can't stack, so try not to put 4-piece Noblesse on your Xiangling. So similar to Raiden, if you don't have enough ER, you can just go for an ER Sans right here. However, if you do have enough, you have 2 options. You can go attack percent, or you can go EM, which is what I'm running right now. You can just mix and match, but just try to pick something which has better substats in general, because the main stat is always fixed. It's just how good your substats are, so just make sure you go for the better substats in general. Now for Xingqiu, he's really simple to build, so don't worry too much, but essentially the amount of ER you want, if you're using a sack sword, it's not supposed to be this high. You want to try to go for 180% to 200% if you're using a sack sword. However, if you're using his best in slot, which is the Primordial Jade Cutter, you will want 240% instead, because most of your particles come from your Fatal Rain screen, which is his E, and it generates a lot of particles and it does a lot of damage. If you have the sack sword, you're most likely gonna hit this 40% and you can trigger the skill twice, which literally enables you to get back your burst in 2 E's. So if you have sack sword, you don't really need to worry about this, but if you're using any other weapon, you might have to worry about your ER. 240% is the optimal one if you're not using a sack sword. So like I said, for weapons, try to use Sacrificial Sword is too good. If not, Primordial Jade Cutter is also really good. On him, it's his best in slot, but you need to build the ER around the Primordial Jade Cutter. If you don't have any of these weapons, any ER weapon is good. Festering Desire is decent for him. Favonia Sword is also really good, so just try your best to find these weapons with ER. The sack sword is the best one overall. Okay, so for artifact set, it's pretty similar to Xiangling and Raiden. You want 4-piece emblem in the end, right? This is your end goal. Try to get here as best as you can. If you can't get it, similar to Xiangling as well, you can just mix and match with your Shimenawa, your Gladiator, Noblesse, even use 2-piece Emblem Severed Fate, it's fine as well. And similarly to Xiangling, this is the last time I'm going to say that, but try not to go 4-piece Noblesse because you're already using this on your Bennett later on. It's going to be a waste if you have 2 users on 4-piece Noblesse. For Sans, if you don't have enough ER, just go ER Sans. If not, just attack Sans is very good. That's pretty much it for him. Try not to go EM. I don't really like running EM on the Hydro because your main person vaporizing is Xiangling. I'd rather just go a pure attack percent on the Hydro character itself. It's fine. Lastly, for Bennett, this is the character a lot of people already know how to build, but for those that don't know, I'll just be briefly explaining it. How Bennett actually works and what he's so good at is buffing your team with a fantastic Voyage. Basically, you're buffing based on your flat attack. So remember, it's flat attack and it's not total attack right here. So this number doesn't matter. What matters if you click stat is this number right here, 844. This is the one how much you're pretty much going to buff your teammate. So for his weapons, the best in slot is the Mistplay Reforge and the Aquila Favonia. Those 2 weapons have the highest base attack. So this is the only way you can boost it, right? It's by having 5-star weapons because they have the highest base attack in the game. So any 5-star is good on him. If you're not using any of your characters, just put a 5-star on him. It's fine. So similar to Xingqiu, if you cannot put a 5-star on him, just try to put something with ER because you want to be able to get your burst back without being on field that much. Remember, the character being on field the most time is either going to be Xingqiu, Xiangling, or Raiden, and it's not going to be Bennett. Bennett's just there to burst. You need the ER so that you can still spam your burst on cooldown without being on the field itself. So try to find an ER weapon if you can really don't have a 5-star weapon that you can put on Bennett himself. For artifacts, as I said earlier, this is the character that will be running 4-piece Noblesse. Just use this set. It's really good for Bennett, not only for this team but for every other team in the game. So don't stack the Noblesse, it's very important. For Sans, the Goblet and the Circlet, it's a little bit different. If you don't have enough ER, by the way, the optimal is 200, 180 to 200, so it's the same. If you don't have enough ER, try to run an ER Sans. However, if you don't even have a good ER Sans, HP Sans is fine as well. For Goblet, HP is the only one that's really good because it buffs your healing. Remember, you can't buff your attack with the Goblet because it does not buff your team. For Circlet, you have 2 options. You either go healing bonus or HP. So it's really up to you. I recommend building Bennett as more of a support character in this team. You can build him as a sub DPS, but it's not as recommended as most of the damage is coming from your Xiangling and Xingqiu anyway, so you might as well just have him as a healer so that they don't die. So for rotations, it's very important to start with Raiden's E, because this is basically the first instance of damage you'll be doing. After you go with Raiden's E, you're going to use Bennett's E and immediately use his burst. This is so that the pyro particles can be funneled into Bennett. Change to Xingqiu and use his E before immediately bursting as well. This is so that you're basically not wasting any animation at all. The particles will be flying to Xingqiu as you use his burst. If you're lucky with the Sack Sword, you can use E a second time, but wait for the particles to fly to Xingqiu before swapping characters, because your Xingqiu will benefit more from hydro particles than your Xiangling or Bennett. So after I use Xingqiu, what I will actually do is I will use Bennett's E, immediately swap to Xiangling after that, and then use her burst immediately. This is important because when you use Bennett's E, you'll generate pyro particles, and these pyro particles will be flying to Xiangling as she uses her burst. So after you use her burst, you can use Goba if you want, but once I use Xiangling burst, I will swap to Raiden, use her E one more time before using her burst. If you do this rotation right, you are pretty much guaranteed a burst every single time with this same rotation. So just make sure that you're funneling the right elemental particles to the right characters. If not, you might not have a good rotation. So for pros and cons, the first pro is that this team has a very high energy uptime. By utilizing Raiden at the end of every single rotation, we're able to have a lot of particles flying towards us and a lot of energy restoration just based on how her burst works. The second pro is that with minimal investment, you'll still be able to do a lot of damage. This is because we're taking advantage of the vaporize reaction, which is one of the strongest reactions in the game right now. And with this, you're able to output a lot of damage as long as you have a very good energy uptime, which is already covered from the first pro. Now, it was really hard for me to think of cons, but I would say the only con for this team is that if you're not doing your rotations well, you might not be doing as much damage. This is because sometimes if you don't have enough ER, you need to have a very good rotation. If not, you won't be able to use your bursts respectively. The most problematic one being Xiangling. If you're not able to funnel the particles correctly, you might have some issues there, and this may result in a drop of damage, which is very crucial in Spiral Beast, where every second counts and every amount of DPS counts. So, should you invest in this team comp? My straight up answer is definitely 100% yes. For all the reasons I said earlier, this comp is just really strong right now with how Vaporize works. You also have double pyro in the resonance, so your attack is just buffed like crazy, and it's really cheap because half the team is literally 4 stars, which you probably already have. So you should definitely just invest in this team. Even with low investments, you can still do a lot of damage. With that, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Remember to leave a comment down below what team or what character would you like to see next, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.